Greetings and salutations. I'm here with my review of Friendship. This is a new comedy from A24 that is really making an impression because it is the first feature film that is starring Tim Robinson, who of course is best known for I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, also was a writer on SNL for quite a while, and is just, giving us a lot of really funny, really specific stuff as far as his sense of humor and the style in which he plays things. And now he is getting to lead a movie here alongside Paul Rudd. And I found this movie to be freaking great. So funny. Delivers exactly the kind of comedy that you'd think Tim Robinson would be in and that you'd want him to be in based on his show. And the fascinating thing to me about this movie is that it wasn't something that Tim Robinson came up with. He did not write this movie. This was something that a friend of his, Andrew DeYoung, making his feature film debut as a writer and director, he wrote this story, but he did write it with Robinson in mind. And I think that is the absolute important part of this, because I couldn't imagine this was just a script sitting around that they said, oh, this seems like a Tim Robinson type of character, because it feels so tailored for him. Robinson here plays Craig. He is a very mild-mannered guy living in suburbia who one day meets his new neighbor, played by Paul Rudd playing a guy named Austin, who instantly Craig is enamored with. Just this guy's charisma, the charisma coming from Austin, it's drawing Craig in. Craig doesn't really have many friends. He is socially awkward, and Austin is being very friendly to him, inviting them to hang out. And so this becomes his new buddy, his new pal, and Craig is very, very much sort of obsessive about this new friendship. And that takes a turn when Austin says, I don't want to be friends with you. I'm having some issues with this. And then we kind of see what happens from there. Understandably, there's been a couple movies that have been brought up a lot in comparison when people sort of even just see the trailer for this movie or hear the plot. Banshees of Inisherin gets brought up a lot because it's a recent-ish movie where someone just says, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. And then I Love You Man, because of Paul Rudd's cinematic history, has a guy looking for male friendship. Those are both valid, and there are kind of ways that, yes, this movie can evoke that. But what I really thought of watching this is the Cable Guy, because this is almost like, what if the Cable Guy was from the Jim Carrey character's perspective? Because Paul Rudd, he's got a prominent role, but he's very much a supporting role. We're never with his character when he's not with Craig. Craig is our lead here. It's all through Craig's perspective. Basically, Craig is the Cable Guy if he could mask how weird he was a little better. Because, yeah, he is a Tim Robinson character, and so that means he takes things too far. He doesn't know how to act in social situations. He makes a lot of bad choices, and the movie is all the funnier for it. It is really, really funny. Tim Robinson, it's kind of a little bit of a roll the dice here. Like, oh, can he hold a movie with that type of character? And I think the answer is absolutely yes. Look, you have to be into that type of comedy. And I hope that most people who go see this movie will have seen I Think You Should Leave, because that will give them the litmus test if this is for them or not. Both just sort of awkward, uncomfortable comedy, that kind of purposeful, oh no, someone's making bad decisions comedy in general. But then I think the very specific nature of a Tim Robinson character, how he interacts with the world, it might not be for you. It's not going to be the cup of tea for everyone. Comedy is very subjective. But for those of us who find him absolutely hysterical on his show, that's what the energy he is getting to bring to this movie. And Paul Rudd, I think, is such a great sort of counterpoint to that. Look, on the Paul Rudd scale of funny characters, this is more of a straight man for the most part, because Austin has to be a cool guy, at least cool from Craig's perspective, because this is sort of small town suburbia, and the fact that Austin is a local weatherman and is in a band, well, to someone like Craig, that just seems amazing. He might as well be a giant rock star from Craig's perspective, even though he's not really doing anything that special. And yeah, Rudd gets to do some very funny stuff as far as the charm of this character, the fact that he does have a certain hey man, let's kind of go with the flow, and has an adventurous spirit that can be kind of cheesy, but again, for Craig, it seems like just the greatest thing ever. So he's really great. But this is really Tim Robinson's show, and he makes the most of it. He makes, he does so much with so little, and he does such a great job of kind of letting a joke play out maybe longer than you might think it could work, but he makes it work. And a lot of that is the social situation stuff and how he interacts with characters. And then if he has to turn on the physical comedy side of it, man, there is a part where he has to walk into a glass door, and he makes such a meal out of it in such a great way. Because you can kind of see the joke coming, but then both his performance and what Andrew DeYoung does as a writer-director, I think, like, escalates things. And that's what you want to do with Tim Robinson, right? It's all about the escalation and someone who just can't stop digging a hole for himself in that kind of classic Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm way, but with a very different energy from the kind of character he plays here. So yeah, I thought this was absolutely hysterical. I had such a great time with it. This movie was so funny to me that I overcame the fact that I was sitting right in front of like a group of 5 kind of very broy bros who had to repeat the funny lines out loud after they heard them. They couldn't just laugh and think about that line for later, and when they're having the post-movie conversation talk about their favorite lines, they had to, in the moment, say the funny line again. And while that was very annoying, I also did agree that those were funny lines, and I still had a great time watching this movie. I think the supporting cast is all really good. There's a lot of people who have small roles who kind of come in and nail it. People that you kind of sense that DeYoung and Robinson already knew and knew that, they could bring the right vibe, bring just the right, sort of a move they needed comedically in just a scene or two. I really like Kate Mara here. She's playing Tim Robinson's wife. It's the one role that you have to give a little more slack to, because when you watch sketch comedy and say a hapless buffoon has a beautiful centered wife who seems to be a very strong person, and you can kind of like push to the side, why would she be with him, because it's a sketch. In a feature film, I did have that question a little more, like, why did she marry this guy? But I still thought that, she has some very fun, it's a reactive character, but as the story progresses and how she's kind of more drawn into the insane things he's doing, there's some very funny moments involving her as well. I was kind of a late convert to I Think You Should Leave. I mean, I always heard people talking about it, but it was only a year or so ago. I watched it all on Netflix, and yeah, it was completely up my alley. I don't know why it took me so long. So this movie, it feels like an I Think You Should Leave movie. And so again, it is funny that Robinson did not come up with this idea, did not write it. But DeYoung, yeah, he just matches the sensibility of Robinson so well. His background as a TV director on series like Pen 15 or Flag Means Death means he's already kind of worked a lot of comedy chops, and he knows the energy and the rhythm to bring to comedy like this. And I thought this was a very self-assured feature film debut. And I also like, that it is dealing with this funny subject of male friendship and the fact that there can be a lot of awkwardness around that in general, and guys who are maybe a little more surface. And the funny thing for Craig is that because he doesn't only meet Austin, he meets Austin's friend group, and they can be pretty open and honest with each other, except that Craig, who's never really had a guy friend, we get the idea here, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say, and he's always going to say the wrong thing, hence the comedy. But this is one of those comedies that really pushes things to the edge as far as the uneasiness, and it can get dark, and it can sometimes feel a little dangerous. Like, oh, is something actually really awful about to happen, in a dark comedy way, but sometimes almost like maybe in a more dramatic way. And I actually really enjoy that tension. I'm one of those people who I really like when a comedy can walk that line so well and really kind of push things and see like, oh, where are we going exactly with this? And I definitely had that question a few times here in a way that I thought was very well done. And I love the ending. I thought I was getting ahead of the ending, and I should have known better. And on some level, maybe it's a quieter ending than some people want, because this is not a huge, broad comedy, though there are slapstick moments, like I mentioned. But it does feel like an A24 movie, that this is the appropriate studio to be releasing this. But yeah, I really like the way that things play out, just sort of an inevitability to this. Even though, again, it takes a couple little swerves where you're like, wait, what's going on here? And then you kind of see why it's going in that direction by the end. So yeah, I thought on the comedy side, we don't get a lot of straight up movie comedies these days, unfortunately, in theaters. that's been, you know, a real struggle to get things that aren't like a comedy action movie or comedy sci-fi movie. Feels like you have to be very gimmicky. To get a pure comedy is rarer and rarer in theaters, but it's such a great experience to watch a comedy with a, you know, crowd of people. And I love that this is out there and giving us sort of that unfiltered Tim Robinson energy that only Tim Robinson can supply. So yeah, really enjoyed Friendship. It's coming out in limited release on May 9th, and then I believe it'll be wide on May 23rd. And yeah, definitely recommend it. Again, if you know you like Tim Robinson, I can't see why you wouldn't want to see this, but I can just say it does deliver everything that I think You Should Leave fans will want. All right, guys, if you can like and subscribe, that would be wonderful, and I'll be back with more soon. Take care.